Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. Philippe, it's been a bit of a quiet week, I think. I mean, not much happening in politics or, the sporting world or anything like that. How are you doing?
What are we going to talk about today? Oh, Eric, I
think we're just going to talk about the hockey games yesterday. I mean, they were pretty good games.
They were pretty good, but man, the Sweden really had a bad game. But anyway, people are not there to talk about our hockey takes. But I think by changing our schedule to Thursdays, I think we just avoided the numbers curse, whereas new polls or new events happen right after we start recording. And so yesterday was a big day with another floor crossing. We had also news out of Quebec that a Quebec MP might resign, forcing a by-election, and lots of polls to deconstruct. So, Eric, where would you like to start today?
Well, we definitely got to start with all the news, because there was certainly a lot of news since last Thursday. And you're right. I feel like most stuff happens before Thursday, so we seem to be on the right track. So
wow.
I don't know how to take this. We could take it in the order of events, but first off, I think just after we recorded last week, we got the news from the Supreme Court that they had annulled the result in Terrebonne.
That's right.
Which means there will be a by-election within 6 months there. Not too long after that, and I think it was on Tuesday, we had reporting from the Journal de Montréal, Québécois, and it's more or less been confirmed.
Hasn't been denied. So
that Alexandre Boulerice is considering making a jump to provincial politics, which could free up that seat. And then we got just yesterday the surprise news, perhaps in the timing and the actual event, but not so much the name, but that Matt Jeneroux, the Conservative MP formerly for Edmonton Riverbend, is now a Liberal MP for Edmonton Riverbend, crossing the floor and getting the Liberals one seat closer to that majority mark. Yeah. Everything has kind of changed in the last week, because we've now gone from a few by-elections, kind of dull ones, what's going to happen there. Having those floor crossers we were always expecting around the return of Parliament, they didn't materialize. And now we've got enough by-elections to secure a majority government for Mark Carney if they can win all of them. And also what is happening within the Conservative Party right now. I don't know. I don't even know where to start.
Okay,
do you have a thought?
Let's start with this. Matt Jeneroux announced that he would resign, and there were lots of reports from credible journalists that he had suffered some bullying back in November from the Conservative caucus because he had been tempted to join the Liberals. And instead of diving into that, he just said, "Oh, you know what? I'll resign sometime, perhaps in the spring." And so,
like his letter, if you remember, was like, "Don't contact my family." Not usually the kind of thing you say when, you're resigning for great reasons and things like that. Just like, please don't contact any of us. Leave my family out of it, which is just bizarre.
Oh, yeah.
So, we all kind of knew what happened in November, right? Like, there was no mystery there. It wasn't someone deciding to spend more time with his family out of just, principle and being finished with politics. He was going to cross. He was told in no simple terms not to do it, and he decided, I'm just gonna peace out on this seat.
And I remember I was in Ottawa a few times in December, and the talk was that he was done with politics, and that he did not want to go through this with his family again, which I know, especially, in remote places. I don't want to say that Edmonton is not a remote place, but it's still a long flight to Ottawa. That's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of work. And he said, my life would be better if I'm out of this. But now, there were always possibilities that, he's going to resign. There's going to be a by-election in Edmonton Riverbend, a close riding, a conservative riding, but a close riding in the last election. And I figured if he was going to change his mind and cross the floor, he would do it before the leadership convention in Calgary for Pierre Poilievre. Man, that 87% looked good in Calgary, but I'm not sure how good it looks this morning. It's I know it's just one man, but go look at the reports that we have out of Ottawa It seems like the lips are loosened on the Conservative side. They're ready to
Loose
speak
lips
up.
are sinking the Conservative ships right now.
Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are very much. And I did not expect that, because after that Calgary convention, I thought, okay, Monsieur Poilievre bought himself some time. But it went the other way.
Yeah.
Now,
I was reporting you saw it in Night Politics, the Toronto Star. But with also as Jeneroux, the timeline of it is kind of interesting, because he says that it's been, or some of the reporting we've seen, it's been over the last couple of weeks that it became more likely that he was going to cross. He says the Davos speech kind of was a catalyst for him.
Yeah.
But we've seen, like, it wasn't too long ago when he had a private member's bill that was coming up, and he had said that he was looking forward to speak to it, and kind of indicated that that was going to be the last time he would address the House. There was also reporting we had seen that he was helping the Conservatives find his replacement as a candidate at Edmonton Riverbend.
Well,
now maybe he was just being cold-blooded and was all the time planning never to, be involved with the party again. But it does kind of seem that it might have been that he fully intended, first of all, probably fully intended to cross in November. Then he fully intended to resign in the spring.
Yeah.
And then he kind of changed his mind over the last while and decided to stick around, which itself is kind of remarkable, right? Because the reason that he didn't want to cross, we can presume, is, as you said, he didn't want to go through all of that hassle, all of the attacks he'd get, all the criticisms. That, a lot of people are going to be unhappy about this, including Conservative voters in that riding.
Yeah.
And in the end, he decided, no, actually, I'm going to stick around for a little while. And even one of the reports says that one of the contributing factors was that the riding seemed to be swinging over to the Liberals, which, if you go look at 338 Canada, it suggests it's a toss-up.
There's a consensus right now in the federal polls, and you can discuss perhaps federal polls have not been 100% accurate in Alberta in recent years, but the Liberals are polling at 30% and sometimes a little higher, which has not happened very often in recent decades, right? And I mean many decades. Now, the Carney Liberals in last April, had 28% of the vote in Alberta, which was a record for, I think, since the 70s. Or was it the 60s? I think it was the first Trudeau victory in 68 that matched that number.
Yeah.
Considering that Monsieur Jeneroux won by a margin of 5 points last April, this would be a toss-up. If I put money on it, I would still pick Conservatives as a default, but it would be a close by-election had there been one. So that puts the Liberals, Eric, at 169 seats out of a House that has 340 seats. So not quite a majority just yet.
Yeah, it's 169 to 171 for the opposition right now.
But we talked about this. A one-seat majority is not that much safer than one seat short from a majority with an opposition that is in no way looking for an election. If there was a budget in April, and I know there will be an economic update, and there will be probably a confidence vote or few confidence votes, but there's no way opposition parties would push the Liberals into an election. If there's a snap election, it is entirely of the Liberals' making, at least in the short term. But should we talk about, because all this is linked together, the Edmonton Riverbend, Terrebonne, and now Rosemont, la petite patrie, that becomes... I don't think I saw coming. By the way, I live in Rosemont, la petite patrie. I didn't see that coming. So let's start with Terrebonne. So the Supreme Court cancels the election. There were irregularities. Sorry, I struggle with that word. The Liberals won by a single vote, so they have to do it again. The default setting for me with Terrebonne, it's a suburb of Montreal, very white, very francophone, very suburban, obviously, but growing fast. This is not a natural Liberal seat. It was kind of an accident that the Liberals won it last April. But if you look at the current polling in Quebec, satisfaction for Mark Carney is very high. Approval is very high. The Liberals are still in the low 40s, close to where they were last April. And the Bloc, although they had some better polls before Christmas, they're back to the high 20s, low 30s. So who wins Terrebonne if there's a by-election? It's a toss-up, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a one-vote margin last time, so...
do the numbers since last April convince you otherwise, though? That's the thing.
Well, it hasn't changed. I mean, the polls suggest that things haven't changed that much in Quebec, right? There have been a few polls that suggest maybe the margin has gotten smaller between the Liberals and the Bloc. If the margin has gotten smaller by a single vote, it would be enough to flip the seat.
Exactly.
So it should be a toss-up in that sense. There's a lot of other factors, though, at play. Like, the party is now the incumbent. Like, that has a role in it, right? I mean, technically, I don't even know if technically they're incumbent, but they are the party that has won it last.
Yeah.
And so their candidate is no longer a candidate nobody knows. It's a candidate who was the MP for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
There's the notion that people will be voting for whether they want to have Mark Carney more or less get a majority or not. Yeah. And I don't know how that's going to go. That could work against the Liberals.
Yeah.
Or it could work in their favor, right? Because if you're the clinching seat, I don't know. I think people would kind of expect that they might get some thanks for it. And we have to emphasize that this could end up being, unless we have some more floor crossers, and there's been rumors that there could be more.
Yeah.
This could be the clinching seat, right? Because the three vacancies, you got University of Rosedale, easy Liberal win, 170. Scarborough Southwest, another easy Liberal win. They're now at 171. And if they win Terrebonne, they're at 172 to 171 for the opposition. The Speaker is a Liberal, which means there's a tie. He breaks the tie on anything that would be a confidence vote in favor of the government, not to have the government fall. So they would get their majority that way. So Terrebonne would be the clinching seat.
Yeah.
Unless there's a floor crosser or another by-election in Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. And in that case, they would get more than that tie, that they would get up to 173 versus 170 for the opposition. And suddenly their majority is a lot, I mean, I wouldn't call it cushiony, but it would be better. Yeah. It would be better than that 1C majority that's broken with a tie by the Speaker.
Okay, but let's not jump the gun here, because La Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie, it's its own little thing. We'll get to that. To go back to Terrebonne, I know that the defeated Bloc MP received a lot of sympathy, and why wouldn't you? You lost by a single vote, right? It was amazing, the story, and then that lady who received back her mail-in vote through the mail days after the election, saying, "Oh, that was not counted, but I voted for the Bloc." That was in CTV and Nouveau reporting, Bell Media. So a dramatic turn of events there. It's just that the Bloc Québécois in Terrebonne, they have their slogan. You want to stop a Carney majority? It goes through the Bloc. It's just that I'm not sure that message will have a lot of traction. A lot of voters, not just in Quebec, but in Canada, they're looking for stability right now. And so if the Bloc goes with the easy slogan, you want to stop a majority that goes against the interest of Quebec, vote for us, there's a lot of voters that will actually, I would like something quieter. I would like to have a steady hand on the wheel. It's just that Terrebonne is not a natural seat for the Liberals. And if we go then into Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie, this is a very urban seat. I remember looking at the data from StatsCan. It is the third densest riding in Canada. Toronto Centre is first. Second is Papineau. The third is Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. So it's very urban, very dense, francophone. Although there is, it's multicultural, but it's mostly francophone that live here. And so the NDP has won this on the backs. In 2011, it was, of course, the Orange Wave, Jack Layton. But 2015, 2019, 2021, now 2025, this was a Boulerice seat, an Alexandre Boulerice seat. And if M. Boulerice decides to go provincially and resigns his seat, the NDP is done in Quebec for a long time. It will take a long time for them to find another place, another spot where they can win, because they weren't competitive anywhere else in Quebec. You would think that the Liberals, having finished second in the past few elections in Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie, it would not be a safe seat, but it would be a pretty good seat for them to pick up. And then, as you said, a little cushion for the Liberals, if that happens, of course.
Yeah, so, I mean, the NDP has held Rosemont since 2011.
Yep.
Boulerice has it has primarily been a Boulerice seat.
Yeah.
As I wrote about on my site this morning, he would withstand whatever trends were happening in Quebec for the NDP. If the NDP was dropping a lot in Montreal, he didn't drop as much. If the NDP was gaining a bit, he gained even more. So when he goes, it's almost impossible to imagine, unless they can get like Valérie Plante to run or something.
Why would she do that?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, of course.
To even retain 30% of the vote, it just seems like it would be super, super difficult for them. So the NDP had 41, the Liberals had 32 last time, the Bloc had 18. So if we assume that the NDP drops 15 points in Rosemont at least.
Yeah.
Some of that will go to the Bloc. Some of that will go to the Liberals. You could imagine kind of like a three-way race, maybe, that becomes hard to predict. But it does seem like that would be a winnable seat for the Liberals.
Oh, yeah.
But also, if Boulerice resigns, that also helps the majority for Mark Carney, right? Because there's one less opposition vote.
That's right.
So, like, there's just... All of this is just... we were talking about it at the end of the last year when Michael Maw crossed that would Carney get the majority in the next year? It is starting to line up, right? He can based on all the rumors, he can probably maybe get another floor crosser or two. Wow. He's got these by-elections that are opening up that should provide an opportunity as well. It seems kind of almost inevitable. I looked at the calendar. The first time they likely to call Terrebonne would be March 1st. By the end of April.
Yeah.
By the end of April, at least, the Liberals might be in majority territory.
I think I want to go back to Rosemont La Petite Patrie here because there's many aspects to this, and one, of course, is the NDP. For those who listen to us, perhaps they're not entirely aware of the state of Quebec politics provincially. Québec Solidaire, the left-wing party, the sovereigntist left-wing party, if you look at the polls, they're not doing that well. Most of polls put the Québec Solidaire in single digits. They had 15% of the vote in the last Quebec election, finished second in the popular vote, 11 seats they won a by-election, then for 12. So it was a good result historically to their standards. But if you look at the projections right now, we're talking about maybe 3 seats, maybe 4, but tops. Québec Solidaire is really not doing that well internal fighting. And still, then you have Monsieur Boulerice, who's in the NDP, who has a safe seat because he made it safe. He's looking at the state of the federal NDP and he's going, you know what? I'm looking at Québec Solidaire and that looks pretty good right now. And what does that say about the NDP? Perhaps he's looking at the leadership race, because of course there all are. There's only 7 of them, and NDP MPs. And you would have to think, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but you would have to think that if the NDP was polling at 15% federally and they would have a shot at the balance of power, having 30 seats or something, perhaps it would be more enticing for Monsieur Boulerice to stay. But he's chosen, we think, to go with Québec Solidaire, another party that's struggling provincially. It just says that the NDP maybe is in for a few rough years, not just in Quebec, but in Eastern Canada. I mean, he's the only MP from the NDP east of Winnipeg. That is something. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. We should mention, of the 3 or 4 seats Quebec Solidaire would win, one of them would be Gouin, which is the riding that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we should also mention Quebec Solidaire has to change its nomination rules because they want to try to have a gendered balance caucus. So in seats that they held, if there's vacancies that come up, they wanted to have women or non-male candidates be in the as the Quebec Solidaire candidates. So they're going to vote on an exception in Gouin. This is one of the reasons why people are aware of what is happening in Gouin. Yeah. And they're not confirming that it's Boulerice, but they're saying it's a left-wing sovereignist with some profile.
Who knows the writing?
So, everybody knows that it's probably Boulerice. And you could imagine that for him, he could see that if the next election, Saul Zenitzi doesn't get reelected in his riding out in Quebec City, that the male co-spokesperson position would open up, so he could become the co-leader of Quebec Solidaire.
I hadn't thought of that, yeah.
Maybe that's sort of it, but maybe he's just done with federal politics. I mean, being NDP MP is not, it's not the funnest job. There's not the most.
Yeah.
You got no committee seats there right now. They've got They got a little bit of balance of power, but not much.
Not much. No.
But yeah, just the fact that this will literally end the last little bits of the orange wave that they had.
Yep.
Because Boulerice was elected in 2011. He's the sole survivor from that Quebec wave. And then once he's gone, as you said, it's hard to imagine the NDP winning a seat in Quebec for another a little while.
Okay,
let's just put it that way.
So I think we agree, but I'm just asking the questions and also for our listeners. Where do the Liberals most likely win? Terrebonne or Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie?
Out of the two, I would say they probably have a better shot in Rosemont.
Oh, me too. Okay. Yeah. Okay, just so we're sure. I still think Terrebonne was such an unnatural seat for the federal Liberals. I mean, last year we had a by-election in the provincial riding of Terrebonne. Now, the borders are not exactly the same, but they do overlap significantly. And the Parti Québécois won this with more than 50% of the vote. Mm-hmm. And the Quebec Liberals had single digits. And so that's why, I mean, I think Quebec, more than other provinces, do not confuse federal and provincial branding. So they know the difference between the Quebec Liberals and the federal Liberals. But still, that's a huge gap.
Yeah, but don't you think that means that there must have been some voters who in March, because I think it was in March,
yeah,
voted for the Parti Québécois, and then in April voted for the Carney Liberals?
Yeah, it overlaps, for sure. So. The Quebec polls say that about 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 Parti Québécois voter would vote against sovereignty, which is what they have insisted on in their campaigns, in their pre-campaigns for 2 years. So,
okay, anyway. So, all right. Rosemont, Terrebonne, it's a route to a majority from our Carney. The Conservatives are not in either of those races. No. Rosemont is I think it's like the second worst seat for the Conservatives. The worst, I think, is Laurier-Sainte-Marie, which is right next to it.
Next door, yeah.
But I think there was only like 2 or 3 ridings where the Conservatives got single digits in the last election. This is one of them. So they're not a factor in either of these things. So that is completely out of their hands. But it does mean that in a few weeks, the Conservatives could be faced with a majority across the aisle from them. How much trouble do you think Pierre Poilievre is in? It seemed like he was okay. It seemed like he got through the convention. It seemed like he was fine.
Again, we know that events can turn on a dime. We understand that. But coming back from Calgary, I was pretty sure that Poilievre had a much longer runaway. But this morning, I'm not sure. Perhaps he can whip them back in place, saying, okay, then we have a few more years. If Carney does get the majority and he holds it, let's forget that if you have a 1-seat majority, one resignation, one sickness, one somebody that becomes capricious or wants to hold out, then you lose your majority.
Or becomes an independent because of some scandal or something.
Exactly. So it's not a safe majority. But if Mr. Carney manages to hold this number, that means that the Conservatives have a few years ahead of them to prepare to be the government in waiting, with an election perhaps in 2028 or 2029. God, it feels so far from today.
Goes fast.
That's true. So do they put up with Poilievre? I think many of the MPs obviously like him. They campaigned for him. They defended him. They were right there at the convention, but it's not normal that the loose lips we saw in the media. Perhaps it's just a handful of them, but it feels
or the same one who's talking to all the same reporters.
Well, it's possible. It's possible that it's just a handful of them, but it's still not normal that it happens this much. So I don't know what it means for Mr. Poilievre. His numbers have not been that great. So if we go back to the polls, we had an Abacus data, a liaison poll, obviously, the tracker, and also the tracker from Nanos Research. And none of these in the past week have been really good for Pierre Poilievre. I mean, Nanos had a statistical tie between the Liberals and the Conservatives, 38-37, which went against the grain. But in the preferred PM, it's not even close. It's almost 30 points. It was 53% Carney, 24% Poilievre. And
even in the poll that would be the best for the Conservatives right now, it has one of the worst numbers for Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like you can look at that poll and be like, see, look, we're doing fine. I still don't really understand how it's even possible. You can have this much of a divergence in the same poll, asking the same people. Like, I calculated it. If you take out the undecideds and all this,
Yeah.
Carney is like 20 or 25 points ahead of his party, and Poilievre is nearly 10 points behind. Like, how is that happening?
Well,
I wonder if it has something to do with the prompting and this kind of thing, but it's just, it is kind of nuts.
It is kind of nuts, but you can explain it through the numbers. That means Poilievre is getting about 80% of conservatives, right? No support whatsoever from Bloc voters, NDP voters, and Liberal voters. The PPC is gone now. And NDP voters, which are high in this Nanos poll at 11%, look at Carney and maybe they don't like this rightward shift, but they look at the binary choice and go like, obviously it's Carney. And again, we had that Léger poll that was in late January. A majority of Bloc voters are satisfied with the federal government. So this is how it happens. That the opposition voters of opposition parties look at Carney, say he's the best choice right now between Carney and Poilievre. But it's still remarkable. Yeah, this was the best poll for the Conservatives, and Mr. Poilievre is not competitive.
Yeah, the polls, so Abacus, Liaison, Nanos, Conservatives at 37 in Abacus, 37 in Nanos, 34 in Liaison. So even the Nanos being at 37, it's not so much that the Conservative number is too high, it's that the Liberal number is lower than what we've seen from other polls.
Yeah.
It is a thing to see a 7-point lead from Abacus because they've been one of the pollsters showing the closest race. This is the widest gap that they've recorded for the Liberals since Mark Carney became leader. Liaison showed a widening gap from its previous poll. And the favorability numbers for Poilievre remain not great, especially when compared to Mark Carney.
Yeah.
So I am curious to see, especially if another floor crosser leaves the Conservatives. Like we said it back in November or December, the fact that he has lost 3 MPs, and he had already lost Matt Jeneroux. We all knew he was leaving, and we all knew why he was leaving. The fact that now he's crossing the floor just kind of twists the knife a little bit more. But it's not normal to lose 3 MPs to floor crossing.
No. In a first year of a parliament. That's...
Yeah. So you do start to wonder if there will be a bit of a drip for Pierre Poilievre after what seemed to be a triumph at the convention, with a speech that people seem to like for the most part, with a good result, seemed to have quieted a lot of criticism, and then boom, back to square one it seems like for him.
One more thing here. You said about Abacus, the widest gap in favor of the Liberals since the election. It is the widest gap in favor of the Liberals from Abacus since August 2021. I looked at the list. You have to go into mid-August, just as the Trudeau Liberals back then were figuring, we're polling well. Perhaps we could go into an election. And how did that go? I wrote about that for a magazine, that if the Liberals look at those numbers and feel comfortable, don't forget that you would have to have a 5 to 6 week campaign after. So perhaps Mr. Carney doesn't want to campaign again. He just says, okay, let's try to convince other MPs to join us and build Canada strong and all these slogans. So, okay.
Hey, you've been watching the Olympics. They building Canada strong, and we're protecting Ontario. I guess you probably haven't seen the Ontario ads.
Actually, I have, yeah. So they're not.
There you go.
They're not targeting.
They even try to communicate to Quebec
that
right. We're protecting Ontario. Why don't we move to some provincial polls?
Yep.
Since I just mentioned Ontario, we had some polls from Abacus. We can do these maybe in a block. We got some from Ontario and Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, they almost seem to be like sister provinces now when it comes to politics.
God.
They both have sort of moderate, PC leaders. They have kind of weak opposition, divided opposition.
Yeah.
So Abacus in Ontario found 44% for the PCs, which was down 4 points from their last poll. The Ontario Liberals were up 8 points to 30%, which puts them actually in line now with some of the the IVR polls that we've seen.
That's right.
And 16% for the NDP. Then over in Nova Scotia, we had 48% for Tim Houston's PCs, 25% for the NDP, and 18% for the Liberals. It's almost every time we get these Ontario polls, it does seem to be pretty steady going. There has been a big swing in Ontario, but not really a consequential one.
No.
It still would be a PC majority.
It would be a PC majority and a comfortable one at that. The only movement, again, you just said it, the Ontario Liberals, that's 3 consecutive polls with the Ontario Liberals at 30% or more. Palace Data, Abacus Data, and Liaison Strategies. But aside from that, I mean, yeah, drop of 4 points for the PCs, but it's regression to the mean. Nobody had the PCs near the 50% mark. So,
and what did they get in the last election? I think it like 43?
43%, yeah. So
yeah.
It's, I mean, my projection update for Ontario, which you can, I mean, it's really close to the election result. There's some regional variations, and we have to be careful with those. But yeah, so Ford is not in danger right now. And same thing for Monsieur Houston. I mean, 48%. I mean, he won one of the largest majorities in Nova Scotia history, right? It was 40-something seats. He would not lose that. And the leaderless Nova Scotia Liberals will, they have the leadership race ending in November. Same month as the Ontario Liberals. There you go, sister provinces. So no change there.
Yeah. The fact that the Liberals are up to 30% now in the Abacus poll, I mean, it does suggest there's an opportunity for whoever does become the leader.
Yeah.
But it does also kind of suggest that Bonnie Crombie she seems to have been dragging the party down, because I'm pretty sure Abacus is one of the firms that includes the leader names in its questions. And so it does kind of show that if they choose a good leader, they'll start with a decent base. If they choose one that is as popular as Bonnie Crombie, that they can fall back again. Yeah. So a leadership race to watch. How about we talk about the Quebec poll from Angus Reid?
Okay, so I will say this. The Angus Reid Institute, one of the leading firms in Canada, and I'm saying this not as a preface to say bad things about them, but we cannot say that they are a voice in Quebec. They were a bit off in their election polls and a few past elections, but they are, they do serious polling. They do serious stuff there. And this result is interesting. They polled after polling on Alberta separation, they polled on the sentiment of Quebec sovereignty, or Quebec separation as they called it in their poll. And the results were very interesting. They were almost identical to what Léger had measured 2 weeks prior. So the formulation, the wording of the question was a bit different. It didn't talk about Quebec sovereignty. It talked about Quebec separation and becoming an independent country from Canada. Some would say it's clearer, but some would say it's also harsher language. And we know that can have an effect on the numbers. So 63% would vote to stay in Canada. 27% would vote to leave Canada. In the Léger poll, it was 29% in favor of sovereignty. So we are in the same range, basically. And when you break down the Angus Reid poll, it was a decent sample of Quebec respondents, almost 1,000, in every region, Montreal, Quebec City, the regions of Quebec, among women, among men, all age groups, francophones, non-francophones, obviously. It was 60% plus in favor of staying in Canada. What do you make of this? I mean, we saw these numbers from other polling firms, but it seems to be crystallizing when we are only, 7 months from an election in Quebec.
Yeah, which I think still raises the big question what role that's going to play in the campaign, right? Yeah. Because it's clear that it's not a very popular option, and if the vote remains divided, Parti Québécois can still win with the divided option, but it could become a little bit of an anchor. But what I found interesting about the poll is that they used the exact same questions as they had asked to Alberta.
Yeah.
So you can actually do a kind of compare and contrast. So, like, for example, in Alberta, there was only 8% who said they would definitely vote to leave.
Yeah.
And there was 21 who said that they would lean towards it. So it was 29%. So it was actually a little bit higher than in Quebec.
Yeah.
But the definitely vote to leave in Quebec was 15%. Yeah. So it was higher. And you do see some of the same kind of partisan breakdowns, that it is based largely on party support. But one of the things I actually found was really interesting. So they asked in both of these where people got their news from. Okay. So I thought this was really fascinating. Yeah. So in Alberta, support for staying in Canada was very high among people who get their news from quote unquote mainstream media sources. It was nearly tied for people who mainly got their news from social media, and then support for Leave was higher among those who said they got it largely with conversations with their friends and family from alternative media sources, and so you do see that there's this division on where people are getting their information from. But in Quebec, there was almost none.
None.
So among people who get it from the mainstream sources, it was about the same between Leave and between sovereigntists and non. Among social media, no real difference there. Among conversations with friend and family, so you kind of get the impression of how in Quebec it is, partisanship does explain a lot of support for sovereignty, but that's because the parties are aligned by the issue of sovereignty. In Alberta, you see it as more about actual political spectrum, that people who are further on the right are more in supportive of it. People who get their media from their news from alternative sources, from social media, much more likely to support separation. Whereas in Quebec, it doesn't really matter. So it really kind of shows in a way that is it's easy to understand if you just, it's like almost as if a vibe. But that in Quebec, the debate of sovereignty is so much different than in Alberta, where it's not a partisan political issue in the same way as it is in Quebec. So I just found that aspect really fascinating.
And to that point, you may have seen Pierre Poilievre, I think it was yesterday morning, I think before the announcement of Monsieur Jeneroux, who was asked about Alberta separation. I don't know, there's 33 MPs, conservative MPs from Alberta, and he was asked, are any of these sympathetic to Alberta separation? And he was quite adamant that all of them were crowd federalists. They want to work to bring people who lean towards separation back onto the fold. And, it talks about national unity. And I think his answer, Poilievre's answer, was exactly the right one. The problem is that true? I mean, did he ask his MPs? Or will we find in the coming weeks or months that there are some rural, conservative MPs federally who, they kind of agree with that movement, and then Poilievre would have to explain himself a little more. That's a huge hot potato, right?
Or maybe boot some people out, but
because
if it's true that the caucus is entirely federalist, that would seemingly be at odds with the support of the party in the province, right? Because we saw the Angus Reid Institute poll was more or less 50-50 among conservative voters for staying or separation. So, that is a little bit of a hot potato, but out of all the hot potatoes, maybe the least hot potato that he has right now.
Lukewarm potato, okay.
Yeah. All right, well, let's close with this poll from British Columbia from Palace Data, which we got last night, evening, and it should be out by the time you're listening to this. Starting with the top line numbers, the BC NDP leading with 42%, the BC Conservatives at 37%, the Greens at 13%, and one BC at 6%, which is actually the same result that we saw in the Leger poll.
That's right.
That raised a few eyebrows. Any thoughts on these numbers?
Well, Palace Data was really good in 2024 in BC. They nailed it to the point, right? So I pay attention to these numbers. So one BC is definitely hurting the Conservatives. I mean, 6% is not that much, but we know how close these elections can be in British Columbia. But when you look at the NDP, 42% for the NDP, it's not that great. They're leading. They would be happy. They're leading in Metro Vancouver. They're leading by a wide margin on Vancouver Island. Of course, we have to be careful with small sample sizes. And they're doing okay in the rest of BC, which means perhaps they would hold some of their the seats that they won with a divided vote in 24. But 42% is not that great. Well, I look at the Green number, 13%. That's their best poll for the Greens, the BC Greens, since the election, and then some. You have to go back in time to find a poll that has them at 13%. So maybe a young leader, Emily Lohan, is doing something okay. Perhaps this is just an outlier for the Greens that will revert back to the mean. But I'm looking at this because the division of the vote can go both ways, both on the left and on the right here in BC. That would be my main takeaway right now. What about you?
Yeah, and they had some numbers on the BC Conservative leadership race. It is still kind of what we'd said before, that there is So first of all, the field keeps getting bigger and bigger.
It's big, yeah.
Although it has now ended. I think the nomination period just passed. But it's now at 11. Unlikely, I think, that all 11 can... Because, first of all, you got to raise, I think it's $100,000 or $150,000 to get in the race.
Yeah.
So for 11 people to do that, that means you need to have at least 1 to 1.5 million.
That's right.
In donation money available to these candidates within the Conservative donor pool. And I just doubt that there's that much money sloshing around. And that's not even paying for a single event, a single mailer, a single bus, or
Just
whatever.
A fee to the party.
Yeah. So I don't think there'll be 11 by the time we get to the end of it. But you had 54% of Conservative voters, once they were provided a list of some of the candidates, who said they were undecided. Yeah. So even among the party, you don't have a lot. Caroline Elliott was the top. She had 16% support. And then after that, the next was Daryl Jones at 9%. I still think at this stage it's largely a name recognition race, and there's no name recognition for most of these people. But so it's still got a ways to go, I think, before we can say anything there. But the prize is right there, right? They're only a few points behind, and it wouldn't take much to get them into a place to win.
That future leader inherits a good caucus, a good-sized caucus, good polling numbers, and a tired NDP government there that's been in power since 2017. So, it's a favorable position for the future Conservative leader, whoever that is. So.
All right, let's go to the number of the week.
Okay.
I did come up with one.
Why
don't you go first?
Okay, I'll go first. I published this on the newsletter, on the 338 newsletter, but also I have a piece coming at L'Actualité that's a little more detailed. But impressions of the United States from Canadians. We know it has gone down in recent years. Several reputable pollsters, have measured this downward trend in the Trump era in favorability for the United States. This new poll from Research Co., which has a tracker over time, sees that 30% of Canadians have a favorable view or opinion of the United States. 1 point behind at 29% is Saudi Arabia. And just 7 points behind at 23% is Russia. And so in that long list, they tested 15 countries. And you have all the European allies, Italy, Germany, France, United Kingdom. You have also Japan in there, in Asia, and South Korea. But the United States is last among democracies. In that chart, they are among the North Korea, Iran, Russia, and so the U.S. Canada-U.S. relations is still high on the radar of many Canadians, and recent events have not helped to the United States to have a better image in Canada.
A little pet peeve I have with the way we're often talking about the United States. I see it all the time, where people say Canadians aren't angry at Americans, they're angry at the U.S. government, which might be true, but I'm not sure. Based on the polls, it does not seem that Canadians are... Because when you ask about views of the United States, you're encompassing all of the United States. You're not just talking about who's in the White House. So I think people need to understand that Canadians might be... You know what? Like Canada, I know it's a stupid thing, but we really hope we beat the Americans in the hockey game, assuming they both get to the gold medal game. But we really want them to beat the Americans for a lot of different reasons. And it's not just because Canadians don't like Donald Trump. So I do think, I just get annoyed when people say, it seems like the nice thing to say. We're not upset with Americans. We're just upset with the government. I think there's a lot of Canadians that are upset with Americans too.
Well, anyway, we saw those numbers and
my editorial.
College,
you look at these polls.
Yeah.
I think if you're a pollster out there, ask a question. Are Canadians angry at the U.S. government? Are they angry at Americans as well? I think we took it all very personally. Anyway, my number of the week will be just the number one for a couple of reasons. One is Terrebonne showed how every vote does count, even when they're not counted. And also that it could be coming down to one seat in the House of Commons when it comes to a majority vote in by-elections with floor crossers. So I think this week the number one is the big number because, I'm not surprised that the Supreme Court decided to annul the result.
No.
But it just shows, once again, that every vote can matter, and you don't know if you're in one of those ridings that's going to be the vote that matters the most. So.
Listen, there was a case to be made to not throw that election in Terrebonne based on that's to setting the precedent. And had this been the case, the Liberals would literally have a majority by one vote out of 18 million voters. So anyway, so it's absolutely, I agree with your number of the week.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll be it for this week. We got, I think we're doing Les Chiffres next week. So we'll have a bonus episode in 2 weeks. And if you want to listen to Les Chiffres, you can find it in lots of different places, YouTube and on Apple Podcasts and other podcasts. And then we'll be back next week with our normal episode of The Numbers. And of course, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to thenumberspod.ca. And there you get early and ad-free access to all episodes, the bonus episodes, access to the Discord. When I was watching the game between Canada and Czechia, on one eye I had on the game, the other eye was on the Discord as everybody was freaking out about the Jeneroux floor crossing. So
thank you, Nick Suzuki. All right.
Yeah. Oh man, it's going to be 2 more games to go.
God,
just got to get through the Finns and then hopefully the Americans, assuming they beat the Slovaks. But I'm not sure. We'll see. The Slovaks can surprise us. Anyway, Philippe, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the hockey, and we'll talk next week.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great weekend.